Okay, good morning. I'd like to call to order the Algonquin Highlands Council meeting for August 13th, 2020. I will ask the clerk to do a roll call.
Councillor Barry?
Present.
Councillor Dayu?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Danielson?
Here.
Councillor Shortreed?
Here.
Mayor Moffat?
I am here, thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that Council hereby approves the August 13, 2020 regular Council meeting agenda as circulated.
And remember, we've switched to show of hands, so I will call for all in favor. And that is carried by a show of hands. Thank you. Item number 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Councillor Dayu?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to declare a disclosure of conflict of interest in the first agenda item for the public meeting this morning, the Claru application for a rezoning. The applicant wishes to establish a tourist operation including cabins, and my family owns a tourist accommodation business, and therefore that could be deemed as a potential conflict of interest.
Thank you for that. We'll just have to tiptoe our way through. I've got some notes on how to get us through the 2 public meetings, because Councillor Dayu can be involved in one of them but not the other. So Councillor Dayu will come in and out of the meeting a couple of times in that regard. So thank you for that. Adoption of the minutes of the previous meetings. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as circulated. July 10th, 2020 special council meeting minutes, July 16th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes, and the July 16th, 2020 public meeting minutes.
All in favor? That's carried by show of hands. Thank you. Number 4, public meeting. We have 2 items to discuss, both of which were deferred from the previous meeting. Pending comments. May I have a resolution to go into the public meeting? A mover and a seconder to go in. Councillor Barry, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that Council hereby adjourns its regular meeting at 9:02 a.m. to proceed into public meetings to consider the following. 1, zoning bylaw amendment application AHZBA 120, part of Lot 19, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Claru. 2, zoning bylaw amendment application AHZBA 220, part of Lot 15, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Highland Hills United Church.
All in favor? That's carried by a show of hands. Thank you. I just want to remind, we do have Madam Claru is on the line, and that this is a delegation by phone or a attendance at a public meeting by phone. It's not a conversation with council. So Madam Claru, you will be called on to speak or make comments as needed from council's request. So you'll be muted until such time as you're called on. If that's fully understood, that would be great. Of course, she can't answer because she's on mute, but we'll bring Sean in, the planner, and he can take us through the first item. And Councillor Dayu has left the meeting. Just want to note that publicly. Do we have Sean?
Morning.
See, the way I've got my screen, I apologize. The way I've got my screen set up, I can only see 5 people, and Sean's not one of them. So, Mr. O'Callaghan, if you would take us through the first application, please.
Yes, so this property is located at 9734 Highway 118, currently zoned rural and designated rural under the official plan. The lands are approximately 17.86 acres in area with 117 meters of frontage on Highway 118. Surrounding uses are generally rural and residential, and the lands are currently vacant. The owner is proposing to rezone the subject lands to highway commercial with an exception in order to construct a convenience store, a tourist establishment, and a farm as an additional permitted use. The subject lands appear to be of a sufficient size to accommodate the proposed development within the requirements of the zoning bylaw, including compliance with all other requirements of the zoning bylaw, such as minimum setbacks and parking requirements. There also appears to be sufficient frontage and area to maintain a natural buffer between adjacent property owners to minimize any potential impacts resulting from the proposed zoning amendment. Staff are also recommending that should council approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, the subject lands be placed under site plan control. Policy 5.3.35 of the official plan recommends and encourages site plan control to be used to ensure that proposed development within the rural designation is in keeping with the rural character of the area. Notice of the zoning bylaw amendment was posted on the property, circulated to the prescribed agencies, circulated to property owners within 120 meters of the property, as well as posted on the township's website. To date, 3 letters of objection have been received, and I will read those for council and the public here. The first letter is from a adjacent property owner. They are opposed to zoning bylaw amendment application to allow my next door neighbor to build a tourist establishment and convenience store on their property. I've been living at my property for more than 25 years. I enjoy the peace and quiet, and the very last thing I want is having up to 10 cabins with tourists running around right next door. I don't understand how he hopes to accomplish this with no electricity, and I worry what he's going to do about water and septic. As you know, Highway 118 is a very busy road, especially on summer weekends, and it's dangerous enough trying to pull into my own driveway without getting honked at. With the dip in the road, it can look clear, but all of a sudden you can have a car coming right at you. From Carnarvon East, this section of road is the first bit of straight road, and when cars get to this point, they take off and pass everything in sight. I can't imagine people coming and going all the time to a convenience store on that stretch of highway. And they will also have delivery trucks. It's an accident waiting to happen. On the other hand, I can't imagine why anyone would want to stay in those cabins when they're not waterfront, or why they would go to the convenience store when there was already an established store in Carnarvon. There are so many failed businesses up and down the highway in the Algonquin Highlands area. I'm afraid that his too will go bankrupt, and I'll be stuck with the abandoned buildings as a neighbor. Right now, the applicant does not have a house on the site. I don't really care about the farm aspect of this application, but I am completely against the store and cabins and changing the zoning to commercial. I am just not happy with the activity going on next door. I came here for peace and quiet and can't believe they want to do all this. I sincerely hope council votes against the application and would like to be notified of all further developments on this property. I did also receive a further note from this same property owner with concerns about the smoke from campfires that would be burning at the proposed development. That's one letter of objection. I'll now read the second letter. Objections to application ZBA 00120 to rezone property in part lot 19, concession 2, geographic township of Stanhope to highway commercial. This would pose a great danger to heavy traffic, which currently uses this section of Highway 118 daily. This section of 118 highway is a passing lane for vehicles traveling from Carnarvon, where there is a variety store, to West Guilford, Maple Lake, and Kinesis and Redstone Lake, and Eagle Lake in Haliburton. Daily commercial traffic for the proposed laneway will be a hazard and cause many accidents. My own property has a farm gate to a 10-acre field directly across Highway 118. The Department of Highways rejected a residential use of this laneway, being mine, many years ago, Because of the change of entranceway on this section of Highway 118, and because of heavy traffic flow and curves of the road, needless to say, the traffic is much heavier and faster in 2020. I have lived on this property for over 30 years. The 7 residents who have quiet enjoyment of their backyard would be subject to noise from tourist rental cabins. Drivers looking for the entranceway, driving slowly would cause many accidents as well. The hemp plant is also partially used for marijuana use. Growing and selling hemp is a proposal for the subject property. Although it may be legal, it will encourage an undesired element that the long-term residents of this area do not want. This amendment will devalue all properties in the area. This zoning bylaw change should be more fully studied and the results publicized to all residents. And the final objection I've received, I am not in favor of my neighbor's rezoning application. My main concern is traffic. The stretch of highway in front of our properties has one of the few sections that allows passing. In my experience of living here for the past 21 years, I have seen many vehicles well over the speed limit of 80 kilometers per hour. So those are the 3 letters of objection that we have received.
Sean, I wonder if you could, for the record, just identify who those letters are from.
Oh, certainly. The first letter I read was from Dorothy Robb. The second letter, Muriel Jeffrey. And the third letter was Doug Olive.
Okay, thank you for that. And is there more on your report that you were going to take us through, or is that it for you?
The last thing I was going to mention was that we have now received comments from the MTO, which was the reason this application was originally deferred. They have not objected to the application, but have outlined a process that would need to be followed should the application be approved in order to get an entrance permit to that property.
Right, thank you. And I think there are some concerns around that. I'm going to go to council and ask if council has thoughts. I know they do. So if we can get going through some of those, get some clarifications from the planner. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I'm not in objection to the application. I find it interesting that the primary concerns are traffic, and that MTO don't have issues with traffic with respect to a store, but haven't really commented on the cabin aspect of the development. I'm wondering, because there's so much angst, or seems to be angst about the store, where I see the bulk of the traffic would probably be too. Based on the information that we got from the applicant about what they intend to do, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be better described as a market, because it seems like they're selling just simply their own produce, not necessarily what you would normally see at a convenience store, and that the use of the term market might reduce the concerns of the neighbors. Those are really my own comments.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that's certainly one of the notes that I have, is I find the language convenience store a wee bit problematic, but I did ask Sean this morning, so perhaps Sean, you could provide the answer for that.
Certainly. Yes. So if we would essentially have to create a definition of what is being sold at the property. So we would have to defer the application and work with the applicant to further redefine what exactly what would be permitted to be sold at that property. A convenience store more or less captures essentially what they're proposing to do, which is sell things that are grown on the property, as well as some other locally grown items and other essentials to accommodate those who are staying at the cabins on the property. So there is a convenience store aspect to what's being proposed to capture that part of it, being the selling of goods to, if someone forgot something when they were going to the tourist establishment, things like toothbrushes, toilet paper, things like that.
Councillor Barry.
My question for Sean would be, what are you planning to capture in the site plan in regards to, I'm concerned more about the cabins and the septic and water and that. What would you like to see in the site plan?
Yep, so the site plan would need to be a detailed drawing showing exactly where those structures will be going, including parking areas, septic locations, natural buffering between adjacent properties. So that would all need to be detailed in the plan, and that plan would also be registered on title of the property. And the site plan process would involve council approval as well.
Councillor Barry.
In regards to septage, what would be needed for cabins if there was no running water? Like what would be needed as far as outhouses or that type of thing, or would that be defined?
Well, that would be more building, perhaps even the Ministry of Environment, I believe, depending on the amount. There's a certain number once you get over that, so many liters per day, then you fall into the Ministry of Environment, I believe it is, approval for their septic system.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's 10,000 liters. And
Right.
one of the concerns there is that commercial establishments are not captured in our septic inspection program because they are managed and overseen by the ministry. However, unfortunately, the ministry has seemed somewhat disinclined to assist in our septic reinspection program. If somebody wants a commercial septic system inspected, they have to ask for that, or someone has to complain to the ministry. There have been historically, through the development of the septic reinspection program, concerns that from folks, what I've heard is that the ministry just won't come out and inspect. So if the size of the disposal system for the cabins does fall into the hands of the ministry, that's another question, is how often is it inspected or maintained? Because there seems to be already a challenge with that with commercial establishments in Algonquin Highlands. So another sort of note, I guess. But that would be all part of the building requirements. I mean, the code still exists, and there has to be proper facilities on site that are captured within the code. I still have a couple of questions, but I'm going through council first. Are there other questions from council? Okay, and I think too, it's important to say, I feel it's important to say that, the idea of the whole, market garden and the farms and the organics and that is, I love the idea. I have concerns about the language of convenience store, and the challenge we have with planning is that we have to make a decision on the application that's in front of us. We have to be careful, even though our questions are a little bit future oriented, we can't make a decision on a planning application based on what we're afraid could happen in the future. And while I wish the applicants all the success in the world, the concern is what could happen to a commercially zoned property on the highway going forward if for whatever reasons there's a problem in the future. But we're not allowed to, consider that today. But I do share that property is close to my property, and I've driven that road almost every day for years and been driving that road my entire life. And I really share the concerns about the traffic. One of my questions was, once if we pursue do the zoning application, and then it goes to the MTO through their process, do we have an opportunity to comment back to the MTO on their process? And Mr. O'Callaghan has advised, no, we will not be circulated on that. So we would have to talk now. And the other thing that I think is with the MTO's comments, going back to what Deputy Mayor Danielson said, that it feels a bit like it's out of order with what the MTO is saying with their comments. And my concern for the applicant is what happens to their entire plan if the MTO doesn't approve anything beyond the store, or if it takes years and years and years, or I don't think there's any guarantee, is there, Sean, that the MTO will move forward and let that entire plan happen for these folks? Would that be accurate?
I suppose there is a potential risk that the MTO could not issue a permit, but they haven't expressed any objections to the application. There is a process they will have to go through, and it'll likely involve a traffic impact study, which would have recommendations. Potentially a turning lane would be required. So typically you can get an entrance, but it's just a matter of how much will that cost and how much additional work will be required to satisfy MTO requirements. And unfortunately, we don't really know what those requirements will be until they've applied to the MTO.
Right. And then the other thing I was wondering too is, again, it is dipping a bit into a futuristic view, is the site plan control will stay on the property forever, and the uses would have to comply with what the site plan and the zoning amendment allows.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And so overall, in your estimation, Sean, this is an application that, notwithstanding any of the concerns, of which there are a number, that it meets the criteria of our planning documents.
Yes, that is correct. There are a number of policies in our official plan that do support such a development.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to. Does anybody have any questions of Deputy Mayor Danielson?
Just to clarify a point that you just made, so if for some unfortunate reason the application or the development wasn't successful, and the property changed hands, we would have every opportunity to address any other commercial development that might be proposed there. So
the only permitted uses that would be attached to this zoning bylaw amendment are a tourist establishment, a convenience store, and that farm. Any uses outside of that would require an additional rezoning, which would be presented to council.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, I'll be very honest, that's my concern, that as I said, while I love the idea that has been proposed for this land, and our planning documents allow for the application to proceed, my concerns are what happens if, which is, as I said, not a legitimate reason in the planning world to test this application, but that's my concern, is that if it isn't successful for any reasons, or the property changes hands for any reasons, now we have a place on the side of the highway that may not be ideal at the moment, for cigarettes and bread. But I do want to bring Mrs. Cleroux in, because I do have a question about the store, if we could bring Mrs. Cleroux in.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madame Cleroux. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I wondered if you could answer a question for me. In terms of what your store is going to be, the fact that there would be supplies or sundries for folks who may be staying in your cabins, can the public go in and pick up a toothbrush and some toilet paper, or are those convenience opportunities only for your guests?
It's going to be opportunities for the guests. What would be to the public would be the fresh vegetables that would fall more like in a market.
Right, but if I went in to get vegetables and needed a toothbrush and some toilet paper, would I be able to buy it?
No, there's going to be like two separate stores in one store. Like, we're going to separate the two. Okay,
thank you for that. Does council have any questions for Madame Cleroux, who's on the line with us? Councillor Barry?
I'm curious to know if there's jobs that will come out of this. Will there be opportunities for employment?
When we first begin, it's going to be family oriented, and if in the future arises the need to get help on the land, yes. And we intend, I just want to clarify maybe a couple of questions that were asked. We do intend to have a well and a septic system for the store. So there's going to be the dug well and the normal septic system for the main, what we call store. Our site plan is being done right now at the architect, and I will send it in as soon as possible. And yes, and Junior's right next to me. He's letting me know that we also intend to take all local contractors. We're not going to bring people in from outside to build.
Well, you better start planning now, making those phone calls now, because you're going to have it's difficult to get local folks because they're all very busy. So just a cautionary note there.
We already have contacted a few locals or are in touch with a few locals, like for the slab, the cement slab and stuff like that.
Good, good, good. Councillor Barry has a question.
One
Yep.
more question. Just given the state of affairs with COVID, what considerations have you been thinking of in operating a campground with COVID?
The campground would be phase 2. So for now, for the next year and a half, 2 years, I've been working construction and retail for a long time, so I know how much time it takes. Being realistic, it's going to be phase 2, so we're not thinking about cabins for at least another 2 years.
Okay, thank you for that. Does council have any other questions of Madame Cleroux? Okay, we will, Madame Cleroux, we'll put you back on mute so we can continue our conversation, but I'll bring you back in for the final say in a moment, if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So council, looking for, it's evident, there's no question that there are ample concerns that are not related to the intent of folks who are asking for the rezoning. And the planner has said that the application has merit on its face, and because we can worry forever about what might happen on any piece of property in the future, but we simply don't have the authority to make any decisions based on what could happen on that property in the future. So I think the site plan control, based on what Sean has said, that the site plan control is where we can ensure that it is in keeping with what the rural nature and what needs to happen there. So are there any further comments from council on this? No. Can you unmute Madame Cleroux for me? Madame Cleroux, do you have any final comments about this?
That's the comment. No.
Okay, thank you. We'll put you back on mute. Thank you. We are, sorry, just like I have to, because it's complicated with Councillor Dayu, I'm looking at the notes that I had with the clerk. So we're just going to go, we'll talk about the second item, and then we'll bring Councillor Dayu in for this one. Church, yes. Okay, so we are finished. If there's nothing further, we're finished talking about this application, and we'll just wait a moment for Councillor Dayu to be brought back in because she can participate in this one. And is she here? Because again, my apologies, I can't see her.
I am here.
You are here. Great. Thank you very much. Mr. O'Callaghan, will you take us through the second application?
Yes, this property is located at 1021 East Road. It's currently zoned Community Facility Exception 3 and designated as part of the Carnarvon Settlement Area under the official plan. The application ZBA 00220 has been received as the church property is now conditionally sold, and the prospective buyers will need to have the property rezoned for their intended use. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will rezone the subject lands from Community Facility Exception 3 to General Commercial Exception 5 in order to recognize the following. The principal building existing as of the date of the passage of this bylaw, as shown on Schedule B attached here too, including size and setbacks, are considered as legal non-complying. Minimum lot area will be recognized at 0.463 acres. The minimum lot frontage will be recognized as 20.49 meters. The permitted principal uses of the subject land shall be limited to a restaurant, an antique retail establishment, and a community meeting space. And the required minimum parking spaces shall be reduced to 0. And a note on the last point there, being reducing the minimum parking spaces to 0. The existing parking spaces are currently partially occupying lands under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transportation. The location of buildings on site and services for those buildings limit the potential for any expansion or any expansion of the parking area. The current parking area can accommodate approximately 15 vehicles that are set back from the traveled portion of East Road. The applicant is wishing to continue to use these parking spaces as it has existed on the lands since they have been developed. The MTO is aware of the parking situation and have expressed no concern with the owners continuing to use the parking area. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the subject property, circulated to all prescribed agencies, circulated to property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, and posted on the township's website. To date, no written objections have been received, and it's recommended that council approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendment as circulated.
Thank you for that. Any questions from council on this application? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I'm really pleased to see the proposal for this building. I just hate to see churches being sold and then just sitting unused. My question is the restaurant aspect. Would you consider it to be more like a small cafe associated with the bakery as opposed to a full-on restaurant?
Yes, that's my understanding, but that the way it's defined in the zoning bylaw, it would technically be defined as a restaurant. But my understanding is, yes, it's more of a bakery cafe is what's being proposed.
Any other comments or thoughts? Councillor Dayu.
Yes, when I first read the line in Mr. O'Callaghan's report, the permitted principles of the subject land shall be limited to a restaurant, antique retail establishment, and a community meeting space. I breathed a certain sigh of relief because I know that in our planning documents, we stress the importance of maintaining the rural nature of our township and keeping that character. And when I think about little villages across rural Ontario, this is the kind of thing that a lot of rural villages are finding to do with their previous spaces of worship. It's the little antique space. It's the little cafe. It isn't becoming something else. It is very much in keeping with how Ontario seems to be evolving in its rural spaces where places of worship are coming to an end. And I honestly couldn't be more delighted. I think that does keep very much in tune with our rural nature, and I'm looking forward to visit the space.
Thank you for that. Anything else from council on this application? I'm glad for the church folks that this portion of their lives is being tidied up, because it's been a long haul for them. If there's nothing further, then we'll. So how we're going to do this, looking at my notes, is we're going to close the public portion of the meeting and thank Mrs. Cleroux for her time. Then Jen, Councillor Dayu will have to leave the meeting again while we deal with the 2 resolutions around the Cleroux issue. And then Councillor Dayu will come back in while we deal with the resolutions around the second planning matter. So bit of a hop, skip, and a jump. So if I could have a mover and a seconder to return to the regular council meeting. Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council hereby adjourns its public meeting at 9:33 a.m. and reconvenes the regular meeting of council.
All in favor? That is carried by a show of hands. And now Councillor Dayu will leave us again due to her conflict of interest. So she'll vanish from the screen. And if I could have a mover and a seconder for the Cleroux to receive the application or the report for the Cleroux application. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Berry again.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Berry. Be resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of report PL 3220 regarding the rezoning of lands located at part of Lot 19, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Carew, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated July 16th, 2020, and the council directs a bylaw be tabled for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Oh, sorry, mover and a seconder for the bylaw for Carew. Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-62 to rezone lands described as part of Lot 19, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Stanhope, from the RU zone to Highway Commercial Exception 5 C1-5 zone, Carew, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Thank you. And now Councillor Dayu will pop back onto the screen and rejoin the meeting. And there she is. Welcome back. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept the report on the United Church application? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report PL 3320 regarding the rezoning of lands located at part of Lot 15, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Stanhope, trustees of Highland Hills United Church, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated July 16th, 2020, and the council directs a bylaw be tabled for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. And may I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaw? Councillor Berry, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-63 to rezone lands described as part of Lot 15, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Stanhope, from Community Facility Exception 3 CF-3 zone to General Commercial Exception 5 C2-5 Highland Hills United Church, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? It's carried by show of hands. Thank you for that, and thank you, Mr. O'Callaghan. We'll see you later on in the meeting, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Moving on to number 5 is delegations, and we have one. We have Corey McKay from the county, the county's climate change coordinator, and she's on the phone, I believe. Yes. So Corey, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great, I think we're all doing well. We have a bit of a muddle in our moving our councillor in and out for a meeting, but we're getting there. So I'm not sure what plans are for you to, is Corey's presentation going to come up and then she's going to move through slides or not? So we just have it ourselves. Okay, that's good. So great, Corey, take it away.
Great, so I'll just follow along with the presentation and try my best to let you know what slide I'm on. So thanks for having me. Today I'm giving an update on the county's climate change planning process, specifically presenting the draft corporate climate change mitigation plan for Algonquin Highlands for your review and comment. So moving to the second slide. The plan outlines some of the work we've already done, namely the corporate greenhouse gas inventory, as well as the emissions reduction targets that were set. And it outlines potential actions that the township can take to reach or exceed their target and reduce their corporate greenhouse gas emissions. On to slide 3, just a reminder of the data we've already collected. For the township, 79% of corporate emissions come from landfills, 14% from municipal fleet, and 7% from municipal buildings. And our landfills are included in our corporate inventory because the township owns and operates the landfills within the community boundary. And council established emissions reduction targets of 15% for buildings, 10% for fleet, and 12% for waste from our 2018 baseline by 2030. On to the next slide. Some high-level points about the plan. So it focuses on the corporate greenhouse gas emissions that the township has direct control over. And it outlines potential actions we can take through both building on existing efforts and the work that's already being done, as well as suggesting best practices that have been implemented in other communities that we can now explore for our local context. So as I read the actions out loud, know that the county and our other local municipalities have similar initiatives in their plans. So a lot of this work can be shared amongst us all. On to the next slide. The plan centers around 4 main goals. The first pertaining to our buildings by improving energy efficiency and transitioning to low carbon and renewable sources of energy. For our fleet, reducing fuel consumption and transitioning to low carbon vehicles and fuels. For our landfills, reducing and diverting organic waste, as well as improving our corporate waste management practices and gathering better data on our landfills. And lastly, integrating climate change considerations across municipal programs, policies, and plans. On to the next slide. So working with staff, we've come up with different suggested actions that can be implemented to reduce our corporate emissions. For our buildings, looking at conducting energy audits and subsequently creating a schedule to retrofit the existing building stock to become more energy efficient. Developing and implementing a green new building policy. So should the township expand and need to build something new, then it's built to a higher standard that goes beyond building code. And lastly, continuing staff education on reducing energy consumption. Moving to the next slide for our municipal fleet. Conducting a fleet audit to outline vehicle-specific opportunities for green upgrades. So this stems from collecting better baseline data, identifying purposes of each vehicle as well as their annual fuel consumption. So it can easily be calculated the impact of a low carbon option versus a standard upgrade, looking at life cycle costs as well as greenhouse gas reduction potential. Looking at installing electric vehicle charging stations in municipal parking lots. So to be prioritized for use by light-duty municipal fleet, should the time come when we upgrade to hybrid or electric vehicles, but also potentially could be used by the public when not being used by the township. Developing and implementing a green fleet policy. So this contains multiple components, including anti-idling, vehicle purchasing, right sizing, etc. And this is something that potentially the county develops first and shares with the local municipalities. Continuing safe operator training with an additional component for reducing fuel consumption, as well as monitoring the feasibility of alternative fuels such as hydrogen and biodiesel. On to the next slide for waste. Looking at building on our existing efforts by continuing communication to the public on waste diversion, as well as promoting backyard composting. Referring to collection of better data, completing a waste composition study at the landfill sites, knowing how much waste is organic versus not, and collecting composition data so we have better information to base program development off of. Auditing our corporate waste and implementing strategies to reduce waste from municipal facilities, as well as exploring the feasibility of a reduced bag limit for garbage to better encourage waste diversion. On to the next slide, investing in scale to provide more accurate data on our tonnage, expanding options for reuse, including for the recovery of C&D waste, exploring the potential for food and yard waste diversion. So this is probably the greatest action we can take when it comes to greenhouse gas reduction potential. But here we're really relying on provincial regulations to implement cost-effective programming, supporting and encouraging food sharing and recovery, and increasing source separation of waste in our public areas. On to the next slide, looking at municipal leadership, suggesting integrating greenhouse gas considerations into municipal plans and policies, so including official plans and asset management plans, and incorporating climate change lens into municipal decision making. So currently the county is piloting this in staff reports to council and hoping to expand on this in the near future, and then sharing lessons learned with the local municipalities. On to the next slide. So once a plan is in place, the next step is implementation. And I'm here to support each local municipality with implementation, and it is suggested that a joint municipal climate change working group is created so we can have cross-county dialogue and to provide input and support on the different actions for implementation. And on to the last slide. The final milestone is monitoring our progress. So a big component of this will be completing annual greenhouse gas inventories to see how we are progressing from our baseline, as well as reporting on the different actions we've taken, letting council know what the expected impacts of these will be. And cycling through the milestones again, so reevaluating our targets to ensure that they're still a good fit, revisiting the actions in the plan as internal or external changes may occur. So really it's an ongoing process and doesn't end at the creation of a plan. So that's all for me, but I'm happy to answer any questions or receive any comments on the plan.
Are there any questions or comments on the plan from council? And sorry, I bet there's a hand in the air that I can't see.
Jen
My
has
hand
one.
in the air.
I am correct, yes. Councillor Dayu, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I have a comment for Corey, and then a question / comment for the air and the chair. For Corey, one thing that we've noted in our environment and stewardship meeting, which looks at climate change in addition to a few other things, here in the township is on composting and backyard composting, and there's been quite a debate on composting in bear country. So we've had a bit of a push for looking at backyard composting to more community-based composting. Others have said no, I'm just not going to compost at all. So I guess my comment, my thought for you is, as we're looking at a diversion of waste, of food waste from landfills and encouraging more backyard composting, the bear country piece I think is going to have to figure in that conversation, and some potential solutions will have to be considered for that. Don't know if you had any thoughts on that. And then I have a thought for the air and the chair as well.
Corey, did you want to respond to that?
No, noted, and yes, of course, that is an issue we face here. So hopefully with the working group, we can establish sort of direction that we all take in regards to the promotion of composting.
Great.
Corey, I asked the question yesterday about who the composition of the working group was going to be, and it's primarily municipal staff whose this work will touch all of their departments. What's the plan for reporting back and getting feedback from council throughout the development? I mean, there's a lot of work here. There's a lot of money here as well in developing and achieving this work. So what's the process going to be for including councils on a cyclical basis, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, so the plan is to be included in the annual budget planning process, so whether we assist staff or come ourselves, and working with the staff to create a more solid work plan. So you'll see each action has a vague timeline associated with it just to keep us accountable, but creating a more detailed work plan, potentially bringing that to council. But each of these different actions, as they are sort of built upon, will be brought to council separately, one by one, whether it's approval of a policy or development of a program.
Okay, and hopefully, this is a bit of a dumb question, but everything will stitch together so that we don't, council doesn't get surprises at budget time and then say, oh no, but you approved the plan. You approved the plan, we need $1 million. So it'll be all tied together, right?
Yeah, sort of approving the plan is agreeing to explore each of these items to see if it will work for us locally, not necessarily saying 100% we're implementing all of this. A lot of it's dependent on funding as well, of course, for the more expensive items.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're certainly all worthy goals, and we look forward to working on them. But it is definitely a lot of work. No one said it wasn't going to be, but it's definitely a lot of work. So is there anything further for Corey on the Algonquin Highlands draft plan? Are you going to talk about the county one? Oh, sorry, Lisa Berry, Councillor Berry has a question.
I just wondered if there was anything discussed or anything coming forward as far as energy. I'm thinking solar, I'm thinking wind farms, any type of energy creation in this. I know a couple of municipalities have been very pro energy, so I just wondered if that was part of the discussion.
Corey,
yeah, this plan focuses just on our corporate facilities. So part of the energy audit should be exploring which buildings could support solar or heat pumps, etc. But those larger scale initiatives would be part of the community plan. If it's energy going outside of municipal facilities, it'd be in the community climate change plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dayu.
Just a general thought I'll launch out there. Waste diversion is obviously a very big piece of this. The Environment and Stewardship Committee has been working on some low-level, low-budget stuff in the past to, get displays ready for community events and those sorts of things. But I do foresee the potential for a really big role for the Environment and Stewardship Committee here in conjunction with the joint group. And, it's hard to know at this stage how all of those moving pieces would fit together. My only thought that I want to launch out there is, if with projects and priorities meetings coming up in the next little while, it would be really helpful to know what kind of role the Environment and Stewardship Committee could play, so that if we were able to develop a plan that requires perhaps a more significant budget for public awareness and public education, we're able to get that into our own budget timeline. And I guess until we really know how E&S committee will fit with the joint committee, etc., we won't have those answers. But I sort of foresee that projects and priorities is going to be coming up in the not so distant future, and it would be nice to not miss that opportunity if there is an opportunity not to be missed.
Yeah, I agree, and we need to keep that in mind. And we don't, as you said, we don't yet know. I did ask the question, what happens to, all 4 municipalities have some climate or environment committee, and so we're going to need to absolutely figure out a way to ensure that the goals of each are married. There is definitely a role for our committees, but I guess because this is so new, to me, it seems it's not just defined yet. So let's keep that in mind for budget time, that if there is definitely a role in what Corey's presenting for a lot more public education and encouragement to participate in various programs. And you're right, the committee might need more money for that. So I don't know what else is involved in the plan. I don't know if Corey has an answer. Is it the intent that municipalities would simply put money in the budget because staff are going to do things out of the plan? Or do you foresee there being what kind of role from the various committees? It's kind of an unfair question, sorry, but.
No problem. I do intend on seeking direction from County Council on what my role is in the committees or their role is in the plan. So getting clarity there. For budget planning, the county will be doing their budget planning process in the fall. So potentially mirroring this for the local municipalities as well, or maybe taking a different approach. There's many ways we can approach budgeting this, so having those discussions with staff as well will be important.
Corey, when do you anticipate this working group to get going? Because as you know, we've had a delay on all manner of things due to the pandemic and the time and attention it's taken. And Councillor Dayu is right. You know, certainly for us, our projects and priorities discussion is kind of around the corner. So what, I don't know if we discussed this yesterday. Folks need to know we just saw this plan, the county plan yesterday. What's the plan for, when's the first meeting?
That has not been established yet. I think first would be identifying who should play a role in this. Ideally, as soon as possible, especially moving on to the next stage as well, our adaptation plan. I'll need staff's help for collecting data, really just having those point people to assist with implementation of this plan and then data collection for the next plan. And understanding that everyone's busy.
Right, that's right. Everybody, no one's sitting around looking for a job at the moment.
Yeah.
And I believe the county warden wants to weigh in at this moment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the county council is, I mean, we're all equally excited to be able to make some inroads into this. But I think that they received it more for information and anticipation of hearing back from the municipalities after Corey's finished making her presentations. What input we get from the municipalities, and I would then anticipate that we would hopefully be able to strike a county level committee with representatives from each municipality, so we can try and work together on as many areas as we can, recognizing that we do all do things a little bit differently. There's uniqueness in all of us. So, you know, there'll be some challenges, but I would like to see us all work together.
Councillor Barry.
Great segue. I was happy to see in the second presentation all of the opportunities for funding, potential opportunities for funding. Will there be an opportunity for either each municipality to sort of partner up or have it county driven, but any of the funding opportunities I see, if we can jointly apply to these things, we have a better opportunity for them.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know, Corey, if you had a comment on that?
Yeah, agreed. And I'm happy to help out in funding applications as well, understanding that staff are very busy. So agreed. I think we have a better shot if we all work together.
Yeah, great. Are there any further comments on the Algonquin Highlands portion of this? Corey, do you intend to go through the county one, or is that just for reference for us?
So that first plan that's attached is sort of the piece that's applicable to all of us. So it's not just the county's operations, but it's sort of the introductory document.
Okay, so then that's what you're presenting. There's nothing more that you're going to talk about?
No, that's all for me.
Okay, so we have a, thank you, Corey. To say it is, as has been said, it's exciting to look at some opportunities, but definitely a long road ahead. I would like a mover and a seconder to accept this report. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives a presentation from Corey McKay, Climate Change Coordinator, regarding the draft corporate climate change mitigation plan. And that Council accepts and approves the corporate climate change mitigation plan for the Township of Algonquin Highlands. And further, that Council endorses the County of Haliburton corporate climate change mitigation plan to the county, to County Council for approval.
All in favor? That's carried by a show of hands. Thank you. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Okay, so Corey will leave us and we'll move on to number 6, which is building and bylaw enforcement business. And we'll just get Mr. Rogers in on the screen. And there he is. Good morning, David. You're on mute.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council.
There you are. A couple things for you. The first one is the fireworks discussion. I asked to bring this back. We've discussed it before, and we made modifications to our noise bylaw. And so a previous request to limit fireworks had been brought forward before. There seems to be more interest in it now, and so there's been a whole bunch of emails. I have an email file called fireworks, and there's years of complaints in there. So Dave, if you'd like to take us through your report.
So again, through you, Mayor, as you noted, we have a bylaw. We made an amendment in 2013 to include noise created by fireworks. The bylaw simply said anything after midnight till 7 a.m. would be a noise violation, which meant didn't matter which day of the year, what time of the year, you could always discharge fireworks. So in the past, we would get a call and somebody say, somebody's been letting off fireworks. We would talk to the individual. Now, most of the time, the fireworks were completed by midnight, so there was no violation. So the enforcement issue was very simple. But as you have noted, we've been getting more and more requests now to say, can we bring our bylaw more in line with what is happening in Dysart and Minden townships, which restricts the discharge of fireworks to certain days of the year. So both of those bylaws, I think, are limit to 4 times of the year, other than for like Canada Day, they allow it the weekend before and the weekend after, because Canada Day sometimes falls in the middle of the week. That's where they're at. So what we're looking at is to try and bring our bylaw into compliance. If we continue to if we do change our bylaw to that, it will affect staff, because now instead of just saying, yeah, they were compliant, if somebody's not following the bylaw, we will actually have to do a lot more enforcement. From our end, normally we get 2 or 3 complaints a year, which is fine. This year has been an exceptional year. I think it had a lot more to do with the fact people had nothing to do or whatever, and they were using fireworks a lot. We had numerous complaints from all the lakes this year regarding the fireworks. Again, they were compliant with our bylaw the way it is written now. Changes to the bylaw would make that different. So that's where we're at. We're looking at it. The other problem I have found that during fire bans, people are still discharging fireworks, which is very unusual because obviously a fire hazard. So that's where we're at. We're looking at making some changes to see if we can be in line with the other municipalities around us.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we all acknowledge that enforcement is going to be a challenge, and it's a challenge in Minden, it's a challenge in Dysart. As the old saying goes, locks are for honest people. So there will be people who, knowing that fireworks are restricted to certain days, if that's what council wishes, we'll just say, okay, those are the rules, but there's going to be lots of people who are going to say, well, they'll never catch me up here. I mean, we know that, but I think it's a start if we go in this direction. And as the community grows and changes, we may be able to hopefully bring on more bylaw folks for just more and more things that are happening in our community that didn't happen in the past. So I saw Deputy Mayor Danielson had her hand up, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see this report. I've been getting an awful lot of concerns voiced about fireworks. My only comment is that acknowledging that we are going to have to address the issue of bylaw enforcement, I would hope that at the very least that with people knowing that there are more restrictions, that we will at least have some people who will be more compliant, if not all. I do feel, however, quite strongly that this should be an independent bylaw, simply for fireworks as opposed to part of the noise bylaw. It is so much more than noise because of the incendiary aspect of some of the fireworks during our fire season. For environmental reasons, we're getting many concerns about people setting off fireworks from their docks and the debris going into the lakes, and goodness only knows what forms part of the fireworks that we're putting into our lakes and our environment. So I would like to see it a standalone bylaw where people can easily find it, as opposed to being part of the noise bylaw.
I have to say I support that, and if it's in a noise bylaw, it's just noise. But I would like to ask council if they would consider banning floating lanterns and including them in this. I had some emails with some photographs sent to me that someone had discharged and set free floating lanterns during the fire ban. The irresponsibility of that is really hard to fathom. And someone who doesn't know or doesn't care is going to do it anyway. But again, the folks who appreciate what we're trying to do here will comply. So if there's any thoughts on that or anything else that's problematic that people have heard about that we could ask David to consider. Because this will have to come back, again, this is just for discussion. So if we can give David as much food for thought to bring something back. Councillor Shortby, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, yes, I did. Just curious, David, the other municipalities, have they seen a reduction in complaints since they changed to specific dates for fireworks?
Again, through you, Mayor. No, they're still getting lots of complaints, and again, it all comes down to the enforcement aspect of it again. So they are getting complaints, and they're trying to deal with them as best they can.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think I realize I sound like, mother hen with a big cane or something, but as I mentioned before, I'll mention a number of times that certainly the number of folks that have discovered they can live and work in differing seasons than perhaps they have in the past at cottages or property they're selling at an accelerated rate at the moment. The community is changing, and we need to be resilient enough to see that and know that we've got some, I'm setting the groundwork now, we've got some tough budget discussions coming because we have many more needs in this community than we have had, and those needs are going to increase as more and more folks realize that they can, retire early, or maybe where they work is saying you can work from home now. And so I think it's important for us, even if we know now that we're going to have challenges with enforcement, at least it's a start. We're laying the groundwork, and then we have policy in place that we can build toward in terms of any other staffing needs or resources. So it's a start, and I wonder that we need to do our part as well, which is making sure that sellers of fireworks are aware of what the limitations could be, and also just keep getting the word out, and also if there's any way to make sure we have a better way of receiving complaints or a different way of receiving complaints, so that we can again track them, so that we know what we need to do going forward with additional resources. Any thoughts, any other conversation or discussion on this? Does council support Liz's suggestion of breaking it out separately? I'm seeing nods, yes, and Councillor Shortby has her hand up, so does Deputy Mayor Danielson, so I'll go to Julie and then to Liz.
Oh, no, sorry, that was the yes.
Oh, you were saying yes.
I was saying yes.
Terrific. Liz, what say ye?
I just wanted to say that I supported the idea of banning the lanterns.
And of course, some people will think we're being spoil sports and taking all the fun away, but that's how it is. Councillor Barry.
I think, unfortunately, the overuse of the fireworks has taken the specialness of them away. Like, you hear them on like a Monday night in March. Like, I think it's inevitable that this has come to this.
That's an interesting point, because I've heard that a lot too, where people have said that, you anticipated that you were going to have, the big experience on a special occasion, and now but if somebody is renting a place for a week, Tuesday is their special occasion. So there's always, 9 sides to a position, or 9 sides to a story. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I'm sorry, I maybe should know the answer to this question, but are people going to be able to apply for a special permit that we would be able to issue with conditions? Or are we going to stick to those set days?
Mr. Rogers, what say you on that?
Again, through you, Mayor, we did have a part in the bylaw that would allow people to actually make an application, and it would be through the fire chief. I did speak to the fire chief about doing that. They would have to give the fire chief at least a week's notice prior to their display. He would review it based on the information they're saying, what it is they want to do. So yes, there will be a provision in the bylaw to say, yes, I want to do it on other than the dates that are specified.
I'm just thinking about things like weddings or, very special occasions, not just because we want to.
Correct. And that would, again, it would be an application that would be brought forward to be reviewed. And at that point, the decision would be made whether or not to actually grant them the access to have the fireworks display.
And I appreciate you raising that issue. I confess I had forgotten in various conversations this summer and through the pandemic and having had the opportunity to speak to a bunch of different people, that did come up, that there needs to be, or is hoping that there would be, an application process. There's a very large fireworks display that happens every year on Kawagama. We also have the Village of Dorset has a tremendous fireworks display on the July weekend, but it doesn't always fall on the date because they always have a rain date. So we want to be able to accommodate those planned community events that have plenty of notice attached to them. So I think that's a good option to be able to apply for a permit. Councillor Dayu.
I am certainly in support of pulling this out into a separate bylaw. I'm in support of banning of the lanterns. My thought circles straight back to budgets. Public education, again, is so critical to make sure that people understand that we had a bylaw in the first place and now we've got a new bylaw. I mean, it really is key to this, especially if we do want to keep complaints to building and bylaw department at a minimum. And I just want to encourage us to continue to think through all of these public education needs as we approach budget and see them very much as an investment in the good functioning of our municipality and the effectiveness of our departments rather than just being an added thing that would be really nice to have. I think if it's well done, a good public education campaign is a really critical piece.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's no end of things that we need to continue to work with the community on so that there's a better understanding of how we live and work together. So thank you for that. Duly noted. Is there anything else for David on this? Because obviously we're going to see it coming back, and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I'm not sure whether you can see our CAO or not, but she has her hand raised.
You know what? I cannot see our CAO, and I will modify my screen to have 7 people on it. Madam CAO, my apologies.
Thank you. I just have a question for clarification for David when this is being drafted, because I wasn't quite clear on it. Is the permit going to be for all applications, even on the days that are being permitted? And secondly, is council going to define if the permit is just for those days outside what are permitted, what those special occasions are going to be, or is that going to be left for staff to decide?
It's my understanding that the permit part, and Liz, you can jump in, is for special occasions that are not contained in the identified celebratory calendar dates. Is that what you were looking for? Yes, go ahead, Liz.
Yes, I would see that the dates that we allow them, there's no permits required, but that we use the term special occasion and maybe even qualify it a bit to say examples of weddings, anniversaries, so that people get the idea that it really is a special occasion, not just because they decided that they wanted to have a party on a certain day.
Well, you know, my daughter's birthday on the Wednesday of my 1 week's holiday is a special occasion because she's turning 16. So
well, yeah.
Again, we need to, it's not too different from our conversation about setting parameters around the procedural bylaw that we had the other day. Is I think we need to leave it with David to check with his colleagues and bring us back something to discuss, because while we want to make sure we have some parameters, we can't say, oh, well, you're on the east side of the lake on a Tuesday in July, so you can, like, we can't micromanage the process. We have to find a generalized process that applies. So I think we'll leave it with you, David, you've heard what council has to say on this, and we'll look forward to something coming back. Now, council members will hear some comments too from some additional thoughts from the public. So is there anything further on the fireworks issue?
Just one comment.
Yep, go ahead.
I have not heard one person ever say that they did not want us to look at this bylaw and suggest restrictions to fireworks. At least not yet. I'm sure maybe that will come now, but
you haven't been following my Facebook page then. No, there will be, you know what, it's no matter what decision we make on any topic, somebody doesn't like it. And, our goal is to make decisions that are deemed to be in the best interest of the entire community. And if this is one of them, then that's how it's going to be. But we do look forward to, public input. That's part of the process. That's how we got here today. So we have a resolution to accept the report, but is it just accepting, Madam Clerk?
And directing staff to bring back a bylaw specifically addressing fireworks, including the specific dates and times.
Can you add floating lanterns to that?
Addressing the discharging fireworks and floating lanterns. Yes, I can.
And I would ask for a mover and a seconder for that resolution. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receives building bylaw report BLDG 1120 regarding discharging of fireworks submitted by David Rogers and dated August 13th, 2020. And the council directs staff to bring back a bylaw specifically addressing floating lanterns and the discharging of fireworks, including specific dates and times, to council for consideration at a future council meeting.
You've heard that. All in favor? That's carried by show of hands. Item number B is the provincial changes for the regulating of certain vehicles on highways. So David, take us away on that, please.
So again, through you, Mayor, the municipality does have an ATV bylaw in place regulating the off-road vehicles that are allowed on the municipal township roads. And very recently, the provincial government has included additional vehicles that can be allowed on municipal roads. And this bylaw really is just making some definition changes to include the ones that have been approved by the provincial government to keep us in line with the province. The biggest note is there, it does not include the tracked vehicles. We seem to be seeing a lot more of the ATVs that are on tracks. These vehicles won't be permitted in the bylaw because the province isn't allowing it. So it's just some changes to add some definitions and to allow the current vehicles that the province is saying can be on our highways.
So I think the infographics that the ministry provided were very well done. So I did ask a couple of questions of some folks I know who know more about things like Argos than I do. That my big concern, which seems to be covered, is helmets and seatbelts where applicable. We can't control that on the highways. That's already been permitted, but we certainly can try and make our point on that. And enforcement would be a problem if somebody was allowed, you can go on 118, but you can't go on St. Peter's Road. Well, who's going to monitor that? So again, we're back to enforcement challenges. But thoughts from council on the proposed changes, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I've got some mixed thoughts about this, but the one thing that I want to know is if you have any notion, David, about what the other municipalities are doing. Are they just automatically allowing them because the province says okay? Because I think it might be difficult if we decided to do something different than the other municipalities. So, if you just take, I don't know, Green Lake Road or the Barrie Line into consideration, that they straddle two municipalities. So, I think it's important that we try and do the same as the other municipalities. Even though part of me says I don't want to. I'm sorry.
Through you, Mayor, I haven't actually spoken to the other building and bylaw officials regarding it.
Yeah, that could be problematic. I don't know that we need to wait. Maybe they're waiting for us as well. We can convey whatever decision we make to those neighboring communities. We've had a challenge too with primarily in Dorset because it's a county road that is shared with Lake of Bays, which is, in the district of Muskoka. So there have been a few grumblings here and there historically about the permission for ATVs when they didn't happen at the same time and people weren't sure where they could ride. And there was quite a lobby a number of years ago, I think, toward Lake of Bays to do the same. So it's not just with Minden Hills and Dysart, but good point taken. So thoughts from council. I mean, I don't disagree with you, Deputy Mayor Danielson, that I think, like, just can everything go on the roads? Certainly off-road motorcycles, enduro bikes are already plated and insured. So they've always been allowed to be on them. I think we have to, I don't want to do anything that it's going to incur any more potential liability for the township, but seems to be the way things are going. Councillor Dayu.
Just a safety concern, you know, the provincial legislation specifies off-road vehicles on the shoulders of highways. We don't got many shoulders. If I think about the 4 principal roads or municipal roads around Oxtongue Lake, it's sometimes hard to squeeze a truck and a car side by side on them to begin with. And I don't know where to go with that thought, apart from it brings my mother's spidey senses to the fore.
I've had the same experience myself on some of the municipal roads that already allow certain types of vehicles, and it can be pretty pokey slow, and you know, on curves and things. So there is definitely that consideration, and of course that's where the whole share the road campaign comes into place. That perhaps we all just need to be a little more patient. But again, patience only applies to those who have patience in them. Deputy Mayor Danielson, you had your hand up.
2 questions. One, I think somewhere, I'm sorry, in the documentation, it said the date that the province intended to put this in use. Could you remind me of that, David?
Through you, Mayor, off the top of my head, no, I don't know. I believe it's in effect now.
It is. The province permitted them as of July 1st.
Okay.
And municipalities, similarly to a number of years ago when that bill came forward, we have to opt in or out for implementation as of January 1, 2021.
I was just hoping that we might have a little window to speak to the other municipalities. The other question that I've got is if we pass a bylaw with respect to this, is it our responsibility to be the enforcers, or is it the police's responsibility?
Again, through you, Mayor, most of it right now is being done through the Ontario Provincial Police. They have the means to actually stop vehicles and check them. Greg and I certainly don't have the means to pull vehicles over at the side of the road.
Okay, and that's good to hear.
Yeah, and that's the enforcement challenge is that you know, the OPP are also not sitting in the back cave waiting for the phone to ring. So they have been tremendously responsive for targeted patrols when I've received a number of complaints in the past year or so in various parts of the township, and have asked the police to undertake a targeted patrol to talk to folks who are transgressors, and that's worked pretty well. So I'm sure we can rely on them if problems develop. But it's just no one's driving around looking for people with illegal vehicles is the enforcement challenge. Councillor Barry.
I do support Deputy Danielson, or Deputy Mayor Danielson, in regards to having similar consistency with the other municipalities. I think because it became into effect July 1st is sort of doesn't really matter. I think that it's still worth the conversation.
So if you want, we can just defer this and ask staff to touch base with Minden Hills, Dysart, and Lake Bays, and just get a feel for what the others are doing. You're right, there is no rush. We do have until some time until it's till the required implementation or decision, which is January. So if that's what council would like to do, just to be overly assured of the direction, that there's time. Is that what you want to do?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Look at that, nods all around. Okay, so we will see this come back then. David, if you can make some inquiries with your colleagues in those 3 areas, we'll circle back.
Yes, I'll contact them.
Okay, thank you. The clerk is just modifying the resolution, so we'll just take a moment.
If I may, Your Worship, could
Yes, ma'am.
could we take a 5-minute break when we're finished with that resolution before we go on with the rest of the agenda?
We could. Can we just, would it be okay just to receive the Building and Bylaw monthly report, and that will let David go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? And sorry, I need to modify my screen for hands. Councillors Barry and Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Dayu, Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of building bylaw report BLDG 1220 regarding changes to bylaw 2015-44 regarding the use of ATVs on township roads, submitted by David Rogers and dated August 13th, 2020, and the council defers this matter and directs staff to consult with surrounding municipalities and report back to council.
All in favor? That's carried by show of hands. I don't think I need to say by show of hands, but I am anyway. Okay, David, finally for you is your just your activity report. So things are pretty busy, I assume.
Again, through you, Mayor, yes, things have really picked up. We got lots of construction going on in the municipality. And as you can see, our construction value is very impressive this month. And we've, as I've been stating earlier, our bylaw complaints are definitely lots. So we are very, very busy.
And let's, we always need to remember that we love the construction value, but it also means the costs to dispose of the C&D attached with that. There's definitely a negative offset there. Any questions from council for David for this report? Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives building bylaw report BLDG 1320 regarding monthly activities for the month of July 2020, submitted by David Rogers and dated August 13th, 2020.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
And council will take a 10-minute break. Okay, welcome back from our break. We have one item for Parks, Rec and Trails business, monthly report. Mr. Card is on holidays this week, so if anybody has any questions, perhaps the CAO might have an answer. Anybody have any questions on Chris's report? Councillor Dayu.
No question, just a comment that it's riveting to see how the income streams are changing because of COVID and the fact that despite being shut down in the water trails for so long, that we've actually exceeded where we are year to date over last year because of the renewed interest in the great outdoors and in the beautiful Algonquin Highlands. So that's really, really fun to see.
Right, and I'm back to my point about things are changing and you know, let these numbers be a lesson for us in our future planning, and we'll see the same thing with the airport fuel sales when we get there. But may I have a mover and a seconder to receive this monthly report? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Parks, Recreation, and Trails Report PRT 820 regarding monthly activity report submitted by Chris Card and dated August 13th, 2020.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Thank you. We'll move to Public Works business, so we'll just wait for a minute while Mr. Thorne comes to join us. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning.
We have a number of items for you to talk about. The first one is just just a verbal report on the maintenance agreements coming back.
Yes, every year we renew our maintenance agreement with the County of Haliburton for winter maintenance, and this is just an update.
Any questions from council on this? No, we have a mover and a seconder to receive it. Councillor Berry, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council receives a verbal report regarding a winter maintenance agreement between the Township of Algonquin Highlands and the County of Haliburton. And further, the council directs a bylaw be brought forward authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the said agreement.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Next up is your report on the Hawk Lake Waste Disposal Site closure date. Go ahead, please.
Well, just this is the next step in the closure process, is that we would like to select a date where we will be closing the site to the public. Given that it's a year away, we feel that this date gives us adequate time to get out proper signage, get out the notice to the public and site users, and we're just looking for approval on that date.
Thoughts from council on the proposed date? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I know this has been a matter of some angst for some people, but I think that we're giving them lots of notices, letting them know what they need to do. You know, I think this is a good plan.
I would agree. Any other thoughts from members of council? Other than general concurrence, may I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Dayu and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives Public Works Report PW 3620 regarding the Hawk Lake Waste Disposal Site closure date submitted by Melissa Murray, dated August 13th, 2020, and that council hereby concurs with the recommendations made in the said report to close the Hawk Lake Waste Disposal Site to the public on October 16th, 2021.
All in favor? That's carried by show of hands. Next up, Adam, is your report on the very slow process on the airport business park.
Yeah, so I met with the appraiser and we looked over the lots that are listed here in the report, and it is their opinion that the lots value at anywhere from 22,000 to 31,000. So they also added in another option there for a lease rate. It was just thrown in there. My staff's recommendation would be to just go with a straight sale of the property and not lease any of the property, as that, you know, brings a lot of challenges, a lot of administrative time. As you may be aware of other leases that happen down at the airport there. So we would like to move forward, if that's possible, with the approval of to sell the lots. And then before they can be sold, we will be bringing a report back to council regarding the zoning bylaw, or the zoning of that property as well.
Thank you for that. I may be the tosser of a wrench into the works. I wonder, I'd like council to have a chat about moving this forward or just pushing the pause button for a short time. I think with the pandemic and all that's happening with local business and business opportunities, I don't think people are starting businesses right now. I think they're trying harder to save them. There's no question that three-phase power and the road will cost a lot of money that we might need funding for. And we have an asset management plan that is unfortunately very delayed. And as I keep saying, we have a lot of very big projects that need a lot of money that we haven't yet discussed because of the delay in our own process. The asset management plan speaks to what we endearingly call our big picture list, which is our philosophical overview of the world for Algonquin Highlands. And the pandemic has delayed things. And I just would like council to consider waiting until we see some of that firmer documentation. I think we will, I think we're in for a big surprise when the asset management plan comes. And I know that the intent is not to go and hammer a for sale sign on the property tomorrow, but just looking for thoughts from council on that. Or I just, Deputy Mayor, I see your hand, but Adam, did you want to just quickly address that, or?
If I could.
Am I misspeaking?
No, I just thought I would add in there that that it was not our intent to put that sign out on the road, this week type thing. This is just a more of two options were presented, a lease or a sale. The recommendation would be that we sell the property rather than the lease. And then the next report to come back to council would be the rezoning of the property. And from there, we would be able to look into that further of the uses and things like that. But it wasn't our intent to start selling lots off right now by any means.
And I know Deputy Mayor Danielson has something to say about that. So go ahead, please.
I completely agree with the need for us to see our asset management plan. And I've got to say that I'm so terribly disappointed that it is as delayed as it is. But, we've moved along with this project sort of on a slow and steady pace. I think that we can continue to do that. And I would like to put forth a couple of thoughts about the development. First of all, it's been my experience when creating a development like this, that you divide the cost of any of our costs of development into all of the lots, not some of the lots. And I'm looking at in particular, the small cul-de-sac road that we would build at some point in the future. I'd like to see us get an estimate of what that would cost and have that cost included in all of the lots. Because it will offer opportunities to more than just the back lots. I would also like to see us consider leases. I know that it does add more administrative work, but we have a lease process in place and a management system for that. So I would like I think that there would be more opportunities there if we offer both sale and lease. There may be some people who would like to be able to develop, but the cost of the land might put it just over the top. I believe that we can offer both, and it would maybe give us a little bit more control over what's developed there. There's no mad dash. I'm thinking that this is information that you'll need to work on for a little while to come back with more information, which will kind of slow the process, and hopefully we'll get our asset management plan in place soon.
Indeed. Madam CAO has her hand up. Go ahead, please.
I'd just like to suggest to council that, if Adam gets the cost on what it would cost to build the road and bring in the three-phase power, that once we have those costs, that those costs perhaps be funded by some form of funding stream rather than building it into a budget. So, and that may take some time for something like that to come out.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think, and for my purposes, just undertaking some of those investigations would be enough of a pause that I think I'm looking for. I just, maybe I'm crying wolf, but I just think we have some big decisions to make going forward, and we should take them all in stride and in looking at the asset management plan.
Just a question on the funding stream, if I might.
Yes, go ahead.
I just think that we need to double check to make sure, and maybe you've got the answer to this, Angie. If we were successful in receiving funding to put in, say, the power or build the road, would we still be able to apply that cost to the cost of the lots and recover it, or does that preclude us if it's funded somehow? I think we just need to double check that so that we can do our calculations properly.
Angie, go ahead, please.
Normally, a funding stream requires us to put in a certain portion, say 1/3 or something like that. And it would be my estimation that we would be able to charge back that 1/3 to the properties.
Okay.
Councillor Dayu.
I'd like to chat for a moment about the big picture list that you referred to earlier, Madam Mayor. I know we're all really looking forward to getting started on that list. Foremost in the top 3 for me is the airport. As I have not been part of the earlier conversations, the last 2 council, 3, 5 council worths conversations on the airport, it's, it really gives me pause. And if we were able to schedule the airport discussion at some point soon, I would feel better moving ahead with the lot development with that in mind. Even if we are able to find a funding stream to support any costs moving ahead with the lot development, say that funding is for infrastructure and we're able to apply for whatever we choose to apply for within that. Well, honestly, I would prefer at this moment to put funding applications in for docks and landings instead of lot development. I don't feel like I have enough of a big picture assessment of our priorities to be able to confidently say, yes, let's go ahead. So I absolutely support Adam's suggestion that, there's still a number of things we need to look at. We need to cost out what these things are, but I will not feel comfortable saying go from this seat until we do have more of a big picture discussion on where we want to invest our very, very small amount of budget and streaming fund stream opportunities.
Thank you. And you've mentioned that before, and it is difficult to come into a project of this size and passionate positions. Certainly, we've had a lot of challenges with it over the years, and a lot of opposition, certainly to the runway, which was long since put on hold. It is difficult to come into a project part way, and I respect that. So thank you for that. And Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I don't disagree that, for all my fervor about airport development, if it came down to the funding being infrastructure funding, and we needed to choose between the airport and repairing, say, North Shore Road, which, is a long-term risk, I would go for North Shore Road. But we also need to remember that assuming and acknowledging it might take some time to see these lots developed, it's cost recovery. So it's a little bit different than just putting money, into a project. But yeah, the discussions I think will help us all. And we haven't had a very easy time getting money at all. So I'm kind of, with yesterday's exception, but infrastructure funding has been a difficult challenge for us. Yeah,
it's interesting in that, because when I was speaking to MPP Laurie Scott about that funding, which we'll speak about in a minute, I said that Algonquin Highlands has historically been tremendously successful in all manner of funding, and then in the last couple of years it seems to have dried up a little bit. So and I think right now money's coming hand over fist from the upper levels of government for all kinds of reasons, but I'm not convinced that municipal infrastructure needs are included in that. So there is some conversation to be held. So I think what we'll do, Adam, you've heard sort of what council's looking for is we'll look at those costs. We'll fold this conversation into, we do have, and I was speaking with the CAO about the big picture list, and that at the moment our council meetings aren't, we're not going to be here till 4 p.m. And so we can pick and choose a couple of these conversations just to set the table, because we have 21 items on that list. Some of them will come off that list. One of them definitely is the airport. Some of them will come off the list because they're being managed in other ways. So one of the items that was on that list that council wanted noted was it was energy management plans. Well, that now folds into the climate change plan. So it's kind of off of our discussion table because that table's been set for that conversation. And so we were going to, the CAO and I are going to look for a way to fold some of those bigger philosophical discussions into the next few meetings. Our projects and priorities meeting for the year is supposed to be it will be, Angie, what, 3-4 meetings from now? It's not very far away.
If I may, yeah, we do it in November, but certainly we could do it sooner.
Or leave it in November and just make sure we get some of that philosophical stuff out of the way. The challenge, what we don't want to do is have council have a conversation and decide some course of action in absence of the asset management plan. I think that would be time not well spent. If we can find a way to craft those conversations just to that bigger picture. So, councillors Dayu and Short-Reed don't have the history of the airport, for example. So I think it's an opportunity to use some of our time to at least explore those. So the CAO and I spoke about this yesterday or Tuesday, anyway, just recently, and we will circle back with a plan for that. So Adam, you've got what you need.
I do, thank you.
Good, and so I guess we'll have a resolution. What's the resolution say? We need a mover and a seconder to accept it.
Accept and defer.
Accept and defer, that's what we're gonna do. So could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu. So but we want action, like there's still work to be done. So defer is still the right way to go on that?
I said defers this matter and direct staff to bring back further information for council consideration.
Perfect.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
It was Liz and Jen. So Danielson and Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 3720 regarding the Airport Business Park Development Appraisal, Airport Business Park, submitted by Adam Thorne, dated August 13th, 2020, and that council defers this matter and direct staff to bring back further information to council for consideration.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Thank you. Thanks for that, Adam. We don't want to rain on your parade, but times are tight. Next, yeah, that's right. Next up for you is monthly activities. Is there something there you want to highlight or anything on that?
Nothing's jumping out at me other than just lots going on. We're staying as busy as possible, and the weather has been tremendously helpful. So given the restraints of COVID, as I keep saying, the weather has really helped. So that's great. We're really happy with that.
Well, the weather was certainly an important piece of getting the Big Hop Road done in one day. I know there was a lot of frustration around that and people fearing the worst. So that worked out really well. And St. Peter's Road was lovely to drive on this morning. Does anybody have any questions of Adam on monthly activities? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 3820 regarding monthly activities submitted by Adam Thorne, dated August 13th, 2020.
All in favor? It's carried by show of hands. The Stanhope Library accessibility renovation tender results. So if you can take us through that.
Yes, unfortunately, I had no bids come back in. I had quite a few contractors reached out and I had some questions regarding it, but unfortunately, on the closing date, there were no bids to open. So yeah, I would like to recommend that maybe we could go back to the original bidder from the first round and have a conversation where we possibly negotiate some of the costs that were proposed, and then move forward with the project based on that.
Yeah, certainly it's disappointing. And, right now there are supply and supply chain challenges. Prices are higher than they were for just lumber and different things. So do you know if this project, if the funding deadline could be extended further, like beyond the extension you already have?
In conversation with Jean and where the funding came from, they did say that there was that option, that they were are very friendly with it. And when we spoke to them about the challenges that we're facing, they were very understanding. So I don't see an issue with that. I think if we were to move forward with this project, once the lift is ordered and we know the date that that would be coming in, we would have a better gauge on when the project could possibly be completed. And if it was outside of our date of completion, then we would be able to go and ask for an extension on that, which I feel would be acceptable.
And so looking to council to decide what to do here, and I'd like to throw another wrench in the works, and is it possible to pick another accessibility project in the community that we could apply, we redirect the money? But it's wide open, and whatever council would like to discuss and decide. Deputy Mayor Danielson, and then I think Councillor Gaillou. Yes.
I'd like to see us go forward with this project. We've been waiting for it for a long time. It's in my mind, as important as any other accessibility project that we might have. And I just wondered if Adam, if you have any inkling that the initial contractor might be open to discussions or to actually doing the work, given that he didn't bid a second time.
Yes. Yes, there is there's a possibility there.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you, Councillor Gaillou.
Adam, may I just ask, does the sole bidder from the previous round have a known history of good quality work in our township? Are we familiar with their work in the township?
Yes, they are, and they've actually worked on lifts just like this this project in the past, recent.
Okay. Anything else from council? Any questions? So I'm hearing direction for Adam to go back and check with the original bidder and see if we can find some wiggle room there. Is that what everybody wants to do on this project? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
It would be great if we could find some wiggle room, but at this point in time, I'm prepared for us to say if that's the only bid we've got and there is no wiggle room, for us to still consider moving forward with the project. But I suspect we need to hear back from Adam before we make that decision.
Yeah, I don't think with the extension that we have, again, and things are admittedly a bit on slow mode, I think we do have the luxury of that little bit of time for Adam to come back and see what he's come up with on that. Is that okay with everybody else?
Just one other point. It'd be kind of nice if some of this work could have moved forward while the library's closed. But I mean, that's the timing of that is kind of up in the air.
Well, we didn't have a contractor to do the work.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, Adam, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just on Liz's comment there. Given the time restraints that we are facing, would it be possible to have that? Like, I can have that conversation as soon as possible with the contractor. Would you require me to come back to council in September with a report with the new number, or is it possible to move forward with the upset limit of what was originally bidded? It would save one process and get the project moving quicker.
Yeah, it definitely would, and I think that's what Liz was suggesting is, she's saying she's prepared to, if there isn't any efficiencies to be found, to go ahead. And so that would allow exactly what you've just proposed to happen. The other option is we do have 2 special meetings coming up for other matters, but if council wanted to see it come back, we could stick it on the agenda, as it were. But what does council want to do? Are you happy? Are you satisfied with Adam just trying his best, but with the upset limit of the existing price, or did you want it to come back? Councillor Barry? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Hello.
Hello.
I would support going forward, but I would like to set an upset limit on the project.
Which would be the amount that's in the report of the 96. Yeah. So the upset limit's already there because that's the price that's the price that was provided.
It's-
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, is that the cost of the project, not what the contractor has put in the budget?
No, that's the
Sorry.
contractor's price from the first round.
So the upset limit would be the contractor's price, not the township's budget.
That's why this keeps coming back, is because it is over budget.
I would support going forward with an upset limit of our determination.
But we can't do that because we've already tendered the job and we got a bid, and it's more than the township budgeted. So the discussion is, do you want to go ahead with it over budget? But in the meantime, Adam will see if there's any efficiencies to be found with the contractor that provided that price. It's up. This is a council decision. This is what the big bucks are for. Councillor Dayu?
I would say, yes, let's go ahead with it. And then I think I'd probably come back and want to have a conversation about why and how we seem to be under budgeting a number of really important things on the list. And I can think of three things, the museum, Hardwood Landing, this project. We seem to be sort of continually in a position of shock with what things are really costing these days. And I just, again, thinking about our upcoming budget and our upcoming projects and priorities, it might be worthwhile if the right people have the right conversation about that, so that we're not really caught off guard.
I'm not sure what you mean by the right people having the right conversations. That would be our department heads, I would think. So the question still before council is, would you like to let Adam have the discussion and still go ahead with the existing price, or do you want it to come back to council? It's a yes, no. Lisa Berry.
I would love to see it come back to council.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I think that this project has been on the books for years. The library has been asking the township to make this building accessible for a long time. The process when we put out a tender is that we receive bids. We do the best if they're over budget to try and pare them back where we can. But that's a process, and I don't really see the benefit in it coming back. We won't. Unless it's to say, okay, well, it's still at 96,000, and so we're not going to do it. But I would be disappointed in that. That's for sure.
Councillor Dayu.
I very much trust Adam and his team to have a solid conversation about those costs and where trims might be possible. And if Adam feels confident that we as a township have done our best to trim those costs, then I think it's safe to give him the go ahead from now.
What does the resolution say?
As the recommendation in the report, that concurs to direct staff to contact the contractor and negotiate possible savings, and council authorizes the project to continue with an upset limit of $96,440, including applicable tax.
Okay, so instead of just trying to seek consensus, which has always been my preference, I would just ask for a mover and a seconder for the resolution, and that will decide the matter. So can I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution, please? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 3920 regarding a Stanhope Library accessibility renovation. Tender results, second round, submitted by Adam Thorne, dated July 13th, 2020, and that council hereby concurs with the recommendations made in the said report and direct staff to contact the contractor and negotiate possible savings. And further, that council hereby authorizes this project to continue with an upset limit of $96,440, including applicable tax.
All in favor? I don't have to vote. That's great. That is carried by show of hands. Thank you for that. Adam, up next for you is June fuel report. and we can see, as we noted earlier, that it's up.
That's correct. Definitely the M&R has been very busy over the past couple months. So they have been in and out getting fuel. And then on the other side, more of the 100 LL fuel sales, they are also up. And I think that contributes to this weather. Like it's consistently amazing outside. So I think more people are getting out and flying. So that's great for us and for them.
Yeah, certainly when we are facing some revenue losses due to the pandemic, that it's nice to see that certain cost centers are actually higher than they were, as Councillor Dayu mentioned earlier with camping. So that's certainly good news. Any questions on, I'm just going to go for the June and the July fuel report, and then we'll do them separately for motions. Are there any questions? May I have a mover and a seconder to accept the June fuel report? Councillor Barry, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council received report AP 720 regarding airport June 2020 fuel usage submitted by Adam Thorne and dated August 13th, 2020.
All in favor? It's carried by show of hands. And may I have a mover and a seconder for the July fuel report? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives report AP 820 regarding July 2020 fuel usage submitted by Adam Thorne and dated August 13th, 2020.
All in favor? It's carried by show of hands. Thank you, Mr. Thorne.
Thank you.
We have one item under fire services business, and we'll bring in the fire chief. Actually, I guess it's more than one. They're all attached.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chief. Talk to us about the world of fire services.
Well, I mean, I can definitely say we've, now that we've returned back to regular weekly training, things have started to get back into a routine. We're catching up on mandatory training and mandatory maintenance. I've also been coordinating with the local chiefs to get back to or reschedule our joint training, our recruit training, our driver training. So yeah, really just things are starting to get back to a regular routine. We also had 2 structure fires there at the end of July in the Stanhope area. So, but the guys did really well. The firefighters performed very well.
Terrific. Are there any questions of the fire chief on I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, is there one resolution for all of these pieces, or are they separate?
It's just one resolution to accept the report and the attachments, as well as the resignation of Mr.
Yes, of course. Okay, so are there any questions from council on anything the fire chief has provided today? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I just wondered if the joint fire chiefs group are having challenges with recruiting, if you're still doing joint recruiting and how recruiting might be going.
So we had that discussion actually this week. We've pushed the recruit training back to February, the next class. So we're going to start recruiting actively in September. And we've gone through the numbers that each of the departments needs. So we'll be actively recruiting starting the fall.
Thank you.
Anything else for the fire chief? May I have a mover and a seconder to accept his report and the attachments? Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of fire services report FD 1220 regarding monthly activities submitted by Jonathan Wilker dated August 13th, 2020, and further that Council accept Rain Ramat's resignation from the Algonquin Highlands Fire Services.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
A couple of things for finance business. I'm assuming the treasurer is joining us, although I surprised her with that last time, didn't I? Got her a bit off guard.
Always good to keep the treasurer on her toes.
That's right. Keeps her sharp. Good morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, everyone.
First up for you is the appointment of our new Deputy Treasurer, Jenna Meeser. And I think I don't know that there's any discussion around that. If anybody has any comments or thoughts, of course, I don't know if you know if everyone's met her yet. So Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Yeah, that was my only comment. It's just the only, these meetings work really well, except for occasions where we end up appointing somebody to a position like this without ever having met them. So, but that will come.
It will, that's right. You can welcome her by email, or you can welcome her when you next see her, or when you first see her. May I have a mover and a seconder for this bylaw? We don't need that. Oh, it's in the bylaws. Okay, so we'll capture that in the bylaws. And just a note while I'm at it for the bylaws, because of Councillor Dayu's conflict, and we've done the bylaws for the two zoning matters already. So in the bottom of the agenda where we just do all the bylaws, we won't be doing those because we've already done those. So just so that's a note there. Next up for Jeannie is the financial impact update. And before she takes us through that, I did send a note out. I think we all know that the Restart program announced their donations to the cause yesterday, and Algonquin Highlands will be receiving $275,900, and that's toward a variety of COVID-related costs, childcare, PPE, all manner of things. I did confirm with the MPP that it also is for offset of revenue losses. So its timing is perfect for this report that Jeannie's about to bring. There's a lot of unknowns yet, and I anticipate that whatever isn't used, we would see that in the reserve transfer discussion toward the end of the year. Would you say that's accurate, Madam Treasurer?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so if you want to take us through your report about pandemic financial impact. Thank you.
So this is just an update from the report that you've seen previously. It's just sort of, we had given you some projections previously, and so these are more of the actual costs. So we did see losses in revenues continue, but as noted in Chris's, with the increase in the PRT camping, because everybody's staying in Ontario, those increases have hugely offset the losses from like the Dorset Tower and so forth. So we're sitting at a 1% loss right now, just based on what's in that report. That's not including all the wages and so forth. And that's also not including the costs that are incurred within our normal day-to-day operations within the township. I am tracking those in addition, but not until we get the end of the day. That would be a more accurate report at that point. Having said that, the letter that the mayor received with regard to the phase 1 payment, just in what I've been tracking to date, we're already looking at $190,000 worth of in-house costs related to COVID. So I'm confident that we will be able to use the $275,000 or whatever initially, and possibly even reach into the phase 2. It'll be hard to say until closer to the end of this whole ordeal.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for that. And there is a reporting requirement for this money. I don't think those details, the letter said the details haven't yet been ironed out, but that's why it's been important from the beginning to be tracking everything, so that if funding came, which it has just arrived, that we would be able to know really accurately what those costs are. So thank you for doing that. Thoughts, comments, questions from council on this report? Councillor Dayu.
Councillor Barry and I have been in the throes of conversations of schooling and the potential impact that kids going back to school will wreak on our society. And my only word of caution is I don't think this is over yet, and it could get considerably worse. So, it feels great. It feels like we're at, 1% down. It's great news about the funding, but boy, oh boy, we won't really know where we're at for another few months. That's for sure.
I agree.
Indeed, and there is a second phase of this Restart program money. It's not a freebie. It is to be used to offset costs. So we can whatever is, if there's anything unspent from this 275.9 at the end of the year, it's directed to reserves. And should those costs increase or those kinds of things happen, we have the opportunity to keep tracking those costs and possibly apply for round 2. I mean, there are lots of bigger centers that are seeing much greater losses than we are, but definitely we've got an eye on it. So I think, you know, notwithstanding the challenges and the concerns, I think it stands us in pretty good stead at the moment because of funding. So that's great. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Dayu about, like, I keep saying we're not out of the woods yet. People are probably tired of me saying that, but I firmly believe that we've got more trouble to come. But having said that, I'm sorry to see that there isn't a little bit more of a gap there in what our losses and costs are over, you know, based against the money that we just received. I was really hoping that we might be able to have a conversation about how we might target any leftover funds. You know, in particular, I'm thinking about, you know, we've been trying to get funding for a communications person. This whole pandemic has bumped up terrifically our need for communications with the public, and I kind of hope that we could maybe chip away at that. Just for one thing, I'm sure that there are other thoughts that people have got about where we could spend money that's been an indirect cost of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think what's the interesting part about this is this money is to be directly applied to COVID-related challenges, and the list I jotted down when speaking with Laurie Scott: daycare, PPE, mental health, data management, transit. We don't have any. Protecting vulnerable persons, which is sort of around long-term care homes, which we don't have one. And she did confirm the offset of revenue losses. So what this does is, instead of our own cost centers taking the hit, we can absorb the costs with the funding, put the remainder in reserves. It's a good offset, and I'm sure as we move forward, and particularly go into the fall season, we'll see some different numbers coming forward. So fingers crossed, there's some left over. But because it's only to be used for the COVID-related needs or losses, we would rely on at least it being the offset of our existing funds, so that we can use our existing funds for the projects we've already earmarked them for. But anyway, so we'll still see it, and Jeannie will track it, and I'm sure this report will come back more than once before the end of the year.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you for that. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that Council receives Treasury Report TT 1120 as information regarding the current financial status of the township during the COVID-19 pandemic, submitted by Jean Hughes and dated August 5th, 2020.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Thank you. Next up is the August accounts payable. The report is there. Are there any questions, comments? May I have a mover and a seconder to accept it? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that Council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the August 13th, 2020 account summary in the total of $1,304,815.90, and hereby approves payment of same.
All in favor? Carried by show of hands. Thank you. Thanks, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Number 11, administrative business. We have one piece. It's the CAO. It has a report for us. This is part of the bigger picture from the org review, and it's all been designed to align our processes so that we can have everybody's goals, visions, projects, and priorities and budget all just follow each other like little happy ducks. So Angie, if you take us through, please. So you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Apologies.
There you go. Now you're
I was just, actually, that was pretty much summarized what I was going to say, so that's fine. Council is aware that the current process that we undertake for the CAO's performance review has been in place since 2008. So as a result of the org review completed in 2018, it was recommended that Council consider implementing a new process, a new updated process. So that is what is before Council now. It's been, we have done the research on many different processes throughout Ontario. and put together what you see before you today. And I think it does reflect what Algonquin Highlands needs now and will need into the future for the performance review of the CAO. Yeah,
and particularly in alignment with other things we've put in place in terms of, as I said, aligning everybody's goals and missions, reflective of what council is looking for. So comments, thoughts from council on moving this next piece forward? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I do know that there's been a lot of work going to creating this document and trying to bring us into the new way of doing things. I like to see that it's a more inclusive process, and it might be a bit of a challenge for us all when we first go through it, but I think it's a great document.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other comments? Can I have a mover and a seconder to move this forward? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of report CAO 820 regarding an updated CAO performance review form submitted by Angie Bird and dated August 13th, 2020. And the Council hereby concurs with the recommendations made in the said report and adopts the new CAO performance review form and directs the implementation of the process in 2020.
All in favor? It's carried by show of hands. Thank you. Planning business, there's 3 items, and so we'll bring Mr. O'Callaghan back in for those. Welcome back, Sean.
Yes, thank you.
First up for you is a shore road closing application on Kawagama.
Yes, so this is the application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. It is a peninsula of land, so there's a fairly substantial shore road allowance that's proposed to be closed. The property is also in the process of going through a severance application, but based on the information submitted, I would recommend that they proceed through the regular steps to close the shore road allowance.
Questions, comments, concerns from council on this? This is the first go around. So may I have a mover and a seconder for this? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop, upclose, and convey the shoreline road allowance fronting property located at lots 24 and 25, concession 2, geographic township of McClintock, Livingstone, Lawrence, Nightingale, and Quagama Lake, Eckler, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. I'm not going to say by show of hands. The second for you is a similar application for Maple Lake.
Yes, so another application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. It is currently developed and a portion of the dwelling is located on the shore road allowance, and they're looking at potentially rebuilding on that property and will require the closure of the shore road allowance before they can get a building permit to do so. So I would recommend it proceed through the regular steps to close the shore road allowance.
Questions, comments, concerns from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop, upclose, and convey the shoreline road allowance fronting property located at part lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, Maple Lake, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That is carried. Another closure application on Fletch Lake.
Yes, a similar application to the last, where a portion of the cottage is located on the shore road allowance, and they're looking at options of rebuilding, and will first need to close that shore road allowance. So I would also recommend this application proceed through its regular steps.
Anything from council on this? Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved, council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop, upclose, and convey the shoreline road allowance fronting property located at lot 1, concession 5, Geographic Township of Clifton, Livingston, Lawrence, and Nightingale, Fletcher, Lake, and Third, and that the applicant is hereby requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Yes, thank you.
Under external boards and meetings, nothing's meeting, I don't think. The only note, as has been mentioned earlier, is the library board is meeting Wednesday the 19th. So there'll be something, there might be something coming forward from that. General business, none. Correspondence, there was nothing picked up there. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept the summary report? Councillor Short-Reed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that Council receives the correspondence listing for the period of July 8th, 2020 to August 6th, 2020 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And that concludes the public portion. We are moving into closed session. We will be back on the back out and open after the closed session. So just wait a moment while we are moved into that. What do we need to do? Oh, we need a motion and a mover and a seconder to go into closed, please. Councillor Barry, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that Council adjourns its open session at 11:31 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following matters. 1, proposed acquisition of land by a township in accordance with Section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. 2, to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board in accordance with Section 2392E of the Municipal Act 2001 as so 2001 as amended. And 3, to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees in accordance with Section 2392B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Sorry?
Could I ask a technical question?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to know if when we go to close, if we need to close out of Zoom and come back in again, or we can just leave the Zoom screen as it is.
I believe our tech staff will make us go away from here. Our close, as you know, is by telephone. So, but you're going to sit at your same desk and make the phone call. Yeah. So you'll make sure that everybody is gone away, right? Yes. So you don't have to do anything. The mothership here will take care of that. Okay, so we will speak on the telephone momentarily. We're not there yet. Okay, I'm advised that we are back live. So back in the open portion of the meeting, I would like a mover and a seconder to come out of closed session. Oh, look at all those hands. Councillors Dayu and Short-Reed. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that Council adjourns its closed session at 12:48 p.m. and open session resume.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Bylaws.
If I may, Your Worship.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just kind of hoping that sort of although I didn't get my word in time, under external board meetings or information, I could just impart a wee tiny bit of information to council that's broadband related.
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly let council know that if you haven't heard it in other forms, that the Eastern Ontario Regional Networks contract for Cell Gap, their RFP closes, I think it's closing this week. They will be quickly evaluating those RFPs, getting contracts in place and starting work at the beginning of 2021. At the same time, the EORN is also working on a 1 gig project across Eastern Ontario that would make absolutely fabulous improvements for us all in Eastern Ontario. It's a huge project. They're getting lots of support from both provincial and federal MPPs and MPs. And they're hoping to use the same template and process that they had in place for the Cell Gap project. So, so you'll be hearing about some improvements, and there is some light at the end of the tunnel, although it's still a kind of long tunnel. And at the same time, because the province has announced funding for smaller projects, the county has hired a consultant and is actively pursuing opportunities for the 4 largest ISP providers in the area to see if we can't fill in some more of the empty spaces. So we'll see what the bigger projects might do, and hopefully the projects that we become involved in at the county level will help to just drive things out a little bit further. And that's it. That's just for everybody's vision.
I think the broadband projects that are occurring at the county level are of interest, and so I would ask Liz going forward if you feel that there's something like that is of value for this council to know, that we get it on the agenda as an item,
okay,
instead of just sticking it in, because I think there's going to be announcements for you to keep us up to speed on going forward. So I think it's a good reminder to just maybe make sure you get those things on ahead.
Well, if there could be maybe a piece on the agenda that's just sort of earmarked for county updates, that would allow me to do that. Because we're going to have a meeting next week with county council, we know that we're going to be getting more information regularly for the next little while.
Yeah, and I not looking to Nickel and Diamond, would prefer if it was a broadband update, because that's the big project. Have something on the agenda called county update, then opens up an entire conversation at the lower tier about the upper tier business, and it would be certainly the expectation that folks should be paying attention to the business of the upper level on their own. And I don't want to get into Algonquin Highlands Council having conversations about stuff that's already been decided at the county or is coming up, because that's the job of you and I. So if we could just streamline it to the broadband.
I was specifically referring to broadband because there will be so much going on.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's going to hopefully affect everybody, and hopefully it will give Jen some relief up there. There's a lot of people that just don't have adequate access, and so it's a lot to come. All right, thank you for that update. And we have next is bylaws. Is that what you have next, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
May I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? Councillor Shortreed and Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2020-74 to appoint a deputy treasurer. Bylaw 2020-77 to authorize a winter maintenance agreement between the corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands and the County of Haliburton.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Danielson and Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-78 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its August 13th, 2020 regular meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And may I have a mover and a seconder for the adjournment? Councillors Barry and Dayu.
Moved by Council Barry, second by Council Dayu. Be it resolved that Council hereby adjourns the August 13th, 2020 regular meeting at 12:53 p.m.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.